Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Ellen calling in from the beautiful island of St. Bart's, and today we are discussing all things about URTA on Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the magnificent Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. If you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
And sister.
That's right, Ellen. Let's not forget that.
Right.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 355. And Steve, I hear the entire town of Dallas is mourning for the pathetic exhibition of what they call professional footballs from the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. I scoff in your general direction.
I tell you, I was watching that game, and I have to say, first, full disclosure, I've been a Packers fan since I was 5 years old.
Me too, 5 years old.
And I thought, I love my Packers, but I thought Dallas was going to bury them. I thought there was no chance in heaven or Hades that the Packers could beat the Dallas Cowboys. And then they started playing. And I thought, okay, well, we collective Packers, we will screw this up somehow. And we kept playing and kept scoring, and everybody was scoring, and it was like the cheerleaders were scoring. It must be. And when they would pan the crowd, and you would see people in the stadium, they're crying, they're rubbing their eyes. One guy's taking his jersey off and ripping it up.
Yeah. Paper bags go on their heads. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And I was happy. I was happy that the Packers won. And I just have to say that, my team now is the Miami Dolphins, and the Dallas Cowboys have the same issue that the Miami Dolphins have, and that is they have a great quarterback who cannot play well in the big game. And that's unfortunate, but what can I tell you?
The thing about the Cowboys, and being fair about this, they have got some real talent on that team. I mean,
Sure.
They really have some great players.
Yeah.
So yesterday's, I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they were getting ahead of themselves and thinking the Packers would be a pushover, and the Packers have nothing to lose. They're the bottom seed. I mean, I don't have any delusion they're going to get to the Super Bowl, but man, it was
they just can't win it. The big one. That's
right.
The case.
Well, Philadelphia, same thing. Eagles were great. First half of the season fell apart.
Yeah, and I think Philadelphia has a bigger issue. I just think that whole team just completely fell apart before the playoffs. The thing about the Cowboys is that they fell apart in the first playoff game against like a number 7 seed. So anyway, let's get on with this show because we have a lot to talk about, and we have a very special show for the listeners today because today we're talking about URTA. And the reason why we're talking about it today is because this weekend, the same weekend, the show's going to be coming out. Actually, we can get it out a couple of days early so people can
it's
listen
actually,
to it.
The URTAs are in Chicago on January 25th and 26th.
Well, that's the second URTAs, right? But which URTAs do you guys go to, Steve?
The Design and Technology URTAs.
Okay.
Either way, this episode is coming out so that people can listen to it and do exactly the opposite of what we're saying.
Yeah, but it's not this weekend.
Okay,
it's not
I thought it was this weekend. That's the whole reason why we changed the schedule.
It's the 25th and 26th.
Okay. Oh, my God. Well, why is Brackley going to URTAs? Didn't he say he was going to URTAs this week? Steve, you better check your tickets, man. I don't know. Or maybe Brackley should. Someone screwed up. Okay,
somebody
here we go.
Online because it says the Design and Technology URTAs, Chicago, Palmer House, Hilton.
Right.
January 25th and 26th, 2024.
So that's in 10 days from now.
Yeah, but you didn't want it to come out.
Better still.
You didn't want it to come out.
That's right. No, you're right, Ellen. You see, time, the older you get, the more screwed up you get when it comes to time. So I have no idea what time it is.
So if it's coming out, if this show is coming out on the 20th, you should say it's about URTA, which are happening next week on the 24th and 25th in Chicago.
All right. Okay. So since you just said it, I don't have to say that. So that's great because now they just heard it, which is fantastic. Okay. But anyway, it's all about URTA. We're not going to do a normal show today. We're not going to do a Let's Talk About. I don't know if we even get to a sponsor right now, but what we're going to do is talk about URTA and the process for people who are going to show their work. We've been getting a lot of letters about this and people saying, what should I show? What shouldn't I show? Is it okay if I do this? Is it okay to do that? How should I behave? What should I eat? Should I ask for money? That sort of thing, So we're going to hopefully answer all these questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this off to Steve because we got a really great letter from Bethany this week. And I think it covers a lot of what we're going to talk about. So Steve, take it away, buddy.
Well, she's going to URTA for the first time. She's been out of school for a few years. So she doesn't have a handy mentor to talk to about this. So she says, I'm attending URTAs in a few weeks as a lighting design MFA candidate. I graduated in 2018. Do you have any advice for showing process? Well, that's a really good thing. That's a good word to put in there. Do you have any advice for showing process at the URTAs as opposed to simply production photographs? And she says, I've got lots of material. I have random notes and scribbles and notes and cue sheets and lighting charts, but I'm not sure the best way to present all this. Should I keep my trifold as production photos and put process work in a portfolio? Do I need to print out my random notes? I mean, she's like everybody else. What do I show? How do I present it? What are people looking for? So, David, what do you think about this? And you're a big guy on process. What do you think about this?
I love this question. When this came to our mailboxes this week, I said, yeah, okay, process. Because for years, early on when I taught at SMU and I was recruiting grad students with Chris Barreca, that's all we really wanted to see was process work, because that's how you know if someone's an artist or not. If they're a designer, is why they're doing it. And it's not just doing research, which research is very important, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it has to do with exploring an idea. I mean, I'm just going to say right now, yes. Process, as much process as possible. Matter of fact, Chris and I, because we knew that in a lot of cases, and I'm afraid to say this, that the URTA undergraduate schools do not know how to prepare their students to present their work at URTA. A lot of people think, well, they just want pretty pictures, so you got to have a nice presentation, you got to be organized and all that. All these things are really good points, but that's really not what we want to see. We want to see some of it, but most of it, what we're trying to find out from the student when the recruiter is talking to a student is if they can think like a designer, why they love doing theater. One of my favorite things to ask a student was, tell me, why did you do this show? Well, it was a musical. I liked it. Well, what is it about the musical? And she goes, yeah, I kind of like it, but, it was assigned to me. That was the worst thing you could say. If someone says, why'd you do the show? Because it was assigned to me. No, you do the show because you want to do the show. You want to do the show to say something. It has meaning for you in your life. And that's what you find out in process works. So what Bethany's talking about, like notes to scribble, what should I do? Should I put them on a trifold? No, but put them out on the table. Don't hide them underneath the table. I would rather see just one project that you have and then just a bunch of process, sketches, storyboards, whatever, because that is how the recruiter knows that you're going to be a great student. How about you, Steve?
Years ago, there was a student at New York, and their work was, all right, but there was nothing special about it, and it wasn't getting a lot of attention. And I thought, well, I'm here. I'm not doing anything else. I'm going to interview this person. And that's exactly what you're saying exactly happened. Is the interview wasn't going so well, and it was the last one of the day, so we had some time. And I said, you got anything else with you? And he reached under the table and pulled out all this information. And it was really good. And I said, why didn't you put this on the table? And the response was, my teacher said, this is not important. But I brought it anyhow. And here's your ticket to grad school, because I certainly want you. There's been a couple like that have just gotten bad advice, but their instinct was, maybe I should bring this with me, just in case. And I've taken 2 students who've had stuff buried that was just outstanding work that they didn't quite know. They're in Bethany's position. They're not quite sure how to display it. They're not quite sure where it belongs on the table. You know, I would say dead center. You know, you've got this little, if you have this trifold thing, one good photograph up of a show, not, 50 up that are out of focus in the same thing. And then let us take a look at the paperwork. It's a bit of a speed date there. So that process paperwork allows us to see if we want a second interview. It also gives you a chance to pick our brains about how we're looking at the project, and is there some kind of meeting of the minds on how it was done. You just never know where the conversation is going to go when you bring the process stuff out, because it's risky business to show it. It's not neat and clean and perfect and
but it's interesting. It's really sometimes more interesting. And one time at one of the design showcases, I don't remember which one in New York, one student had a whole series of notebooks with everything that they did like in the past year, tickets to shows they saw with like scoodles and doodles and drawings around them and pictures that they saw and things they ripped out of magazines and stuff they wanted to use someday. And that to me was really fascinating. Not just their finished work, but all the stuff like that they image junkied during the year and thought that they would use at some point.
Yeah. For years, people would call URTA speed dating for graduate school. Because you only have 15 minutes, right, Steve? It's still 15 minutes?
Right.
You only have like 15 minutes. So you're doing the speed dating thing. But, think about dating for a second. What's the difference of you showing up, to a date, with your hair combed and a nice shirt, you look great, you make sure your breath doesn't smell and things like that. You just talk to somebody for 15 minutes. You need to engage them more than your appearance. It's a lot more important to find out if that person's a nice person, or if they're not, crazy, or they're kind, things like that. You're trying to find that out about them. I'm talking about a 3-year commitment, because that's what we look at when we recruit grad students. We're committed for 3 years to you. And we want to make sure that's going to be a very interesting 3 years. And the hardest thing to do, as Steve was talking about, the long day at URTA, you're seeing someone every 15 minutes, you get tired, right? It's really hard to be engaged for that long, over 4 or 5 hours. An interview every 15 minutes, it's like ridiculous. So you want to make sure that that person who you're talking to is going to find you interesting. And the way you do that is you tell them why it's important for you to do theater design. Why is it important to you, not to anyone else? All of a sudden, it's like, wow, this person really has a strong point of view or points of view. And that person is going to be a good classmate to everyone else, because you will find out in grad school that you're going to learn as much from your other classmates as you're going to learn from the professor. So I think that's really an important thing. So be an individual and show your recruiter that you have points of view about the world and about your life, which you transform into and you express through your art. That is really the key. And if someone doesn't care about it, you don't want to go to grad school in there. Okay, it's that simple.
Well, that takes you into that idea. If you're sitting at the table and we're looking at this process work, one of the things that probably is going to come up is your ideas about what the play is about, what the writer is doing. Why is it important to do this play at this time? So probably you're going to hear during the day once or twice, someone's going to say, tell me about the play. Tell me about what you think about the play. And now you're off to the races. It's the same thing if you're showing your work. If you're showing Streetcar Named Desire, and they say, tell me about the play. What they're not asking for is a plot summary. They're not asking for you to say, well, now there's this guy named Stanley, and he's kind of a brute. They're not looking for that. I mean,
you're wasting time. We only have 15 minutes.
they're looking for what your thoughts are, why the play's important to be done right now. And even if it's a brand new play that's never been done before, and they say, tell me about the play, You just have to say, oh, it's a brand new play. We have a playwriting contest, but this play is about, can we ever find happiness? And then you're off to the races again about, well, there's this guy and he's got a dog named Mac and they're in a Studebaker. It's 15 minutes. By the time you've worked through all that, the bell has gone off and they're moving on. So it would be good, I think, whatever you're showing, if you've given it some time to think about all the discoveries you and the director and the design team and the acting company have made along the 8 or 9 weeks that you've worked on this play and the 2 or 3 weeks of load in rehearsal and performance. Where did you start the process and where have you ended the process? But that's always one of my favorite questions is tell me about the play.
There are other things we're going to cover in today's episode. And one of them is, and we hear this a lot from students who are going to URTAs, is what question should I ask the school? And this is always a good question because there's some information that may not be in the pamphlets, okay, in the documents that you may be getting from the school. And I'm going to say some controversial things here. Okay,
Let me put my seatbelt on.
Put your seatbelt on. This is going to be a bumpy ride. URTA is a fantastic organization, and they serve a wonderful purpose in helping students find their journey. All right, I've been doing this since I've been doing this a long time, and I've been to a lot of URTAs, and I have seen the member schools, and I know a lot about the member schools. So does Steve, because he's dealt with them. I would say the vast majority of member schools are in the right headspace about helping the students, all right? But there are some schools out there that recruit students basically to get cheap labor. And this is occurring and has occurred for the decades that I've been doing it. But it seems to be getting worse only because of the atmosphere, what's happening in a lot of universities nowadays, where it's almost impossible to find labor and pay for it without incurring a great deal of expense. So there's always a balance here. And even the great schools have their students serve as designers, assistant designers, and sometimes electricians in the theater for other shows as well as their own. And that does save them money. And it just works that way. And in turn, they pay you a salary or they pay you a stipend or whatever it is. So a really good question to ask is to be specifically asked, could you please tell me how many hours a week I will be working during a normal school week and what type of jobs I will be doing? Now, if they say, well, you're going to be working in a costume shop, you're a lighting designer, you're going to be working in a costume shop for 5 hours, blah, blah, blah. There may be reasons, pedagogical reasons to do that. And I know in my school there was, but that may not be what you're looking for. So you want to, instead of just saying you're working 20 hours a week in the shops, you find out specifically, is it going to be what you want to do? Okay, is this going to be the shop that you want to be in? There are some schools that have a lot of money that don't require this. They just give you a stipend. I would not go to a school that doesn't give any stipend. As a matter of fact, I would, just knowing the competition out there, because I'm going to be honest with you, this is a buyer's market. You are in control. There are going to be more recruiters there recruiting for lighting designers, set designers, costume designers, than there are going to be students. So that means that every school needs at least 2 people in every area. And if there are 40 schools there, that means there are 80 people in each area. And I doubt seriously there are 80 lighting design people there. So you got to make sure that you choose a school that not only is going to give you a great education, but one that will not use you as cheap labor. And then when you get out, you just have the degree from whatever school it is, which may not mean much when it comes to finding a job. So that is a very important question to ask.
The other thing that I think it would be smart for Bethany to do as she preps for URTA is to take the time now and look at every URTA school. Go to their websites and look up every teacher you potentially will be studying with and read their bios. Find out about them. that way, when you're having your speed date, you've got kind of a little dossier on everyone. So when someone sits down, Brackley Freyer from University of Nevada, Las Vegas, you know something about him. So rather than asking generic questions, you can be very specific with him. I notice you do a lot of theater, I don't know, in Mexico. Is there opportunity for me to travel with you? So these are questions. Engage them as a human being rather than generic questions. The one question that's always kind of weird, but I know why you ask it, it's because maybe you're not as prepared. So when the recruiter says, "Do you have questions for me?" The way that I know they're not prepared is the first question out of their mouth is, "Tell me about the equipment you have at your theater."
Right, yeah.
And that's kind of, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to know, but on that first date, that's probably not the best question in that 15 minutes. It's getting back to, tell me about, I see you work with the Guthrie Theater. Tell me about that relationship. I see that you've got, Ann McMills on your faculty who wrote the book on how to be an assistant. Well, I get to work with her. Tell me about that relationship. You're wanting to find out about the people that you're going to be working with. I mean, a Grand MA console or whatever the console flavor of the day is, that's not the most important thing. That technology will find its way into your life. Everybody's kind of equal. On this level, all the schools have more or less the same things, but it's the personnel there that make the difference.
Man, that was brilliant, Steve. I mean, it is really shocking how few people actually do research on the faculty of these schools. And even though you may have sort of pre-selected the 5 schools that you want to talk to and have them call you back, you're not always guaranteed that's going to happen. And also, there are going to be people that are going to call you back because they're interested in you. And if you know nothing about them, then it's a real problem, because then you're not going to make that personal connection with them. I think, one thing that I have seen students do is they take every single school that's recruiting, lighting designers or whatever you're going into, right? And they just jot down, they have the name of the school, and then they jot down the names of the faculty. And you go ahead and you check the bio, and then you just say, yeah, Guthrie, or you just say, rock and roll, or whatever that is going to make that connection. Like, I see you do a lot of rock and roll lighting. Could you tell me what you have to offer me as far as learning that? Because that's what I'm really interested in. That sort of thing, because there's so many different areas of our business that you may be interested in, and you may not know about these schools, you may not know about these faculty members, so it's really good for you to do that research, because you may discover another school or 2 or 3 where you may be even happier than you would at one of your initial schools. So I think what Steve said is just right on target. You want to make that personal connection.
Let me say it also helps. There's certainly competitive people at URTA. But the years that I've been there, what I have really found is most of the faculty know each other. Most of them are socially connected or commercially connected. A lot of them are friends of each other. And I'm not alone in this. So I'm sitting at a table and a student says, I really want to study, I don't know, we'll say architecture. And I will say, I can't offer that for you. I have nothing to offer you in architecture, but these 3 schools, they are kind of serious about architecture. And if I see, when I leave the table, I will walk up to school number 1 and say, have you talked to table 5? They're really interested in architecture. That might be a student for you. So you're networking there. And if you are clever about the questions you ask and how you interact, there is huge networking going on that you're probably unaware of because you think everyone's hoarding secrets. They're not. They're sharing information about this might be a good fit for your school. This might be a good fit for your school.
Yeah, and just to dovetail on that, the good people that are at URTA, And like I said, it's the vast majority of people. The only thing they really care about is you and making sure that you find the right place. And I can't tell you how many people I've recommended to other schools, because if someone's not into musical theater or opera and they want to just do, historical plays or whatever, and I know that my school really doesn't do that, I would send them to a school and to a mentor who I think would do that and knows how to do that. I think that's just to back up what Steve said. It is about helping the student. So yeah, be honest on what you want, because you don't know everything. And we know a lot more as far as schools are concerned and mentors, that we could guide you in the right place and guide our friends who are also recruiters to you. And I just think that's one of the great services that people perform at URTA. I really do. Also, find out how long someone's been in the program. Find out how active their professional life is. A big part of this is through mentorship and having that mentor expose you to the profession, what type of professional internships they may have. Like Steve has this thing with Verilight going down. Stan has this thing with Oslo. All this stuff is really, really important. And there are schools like that all over the country that you may say, wow, look, there's a relationship with the Guthrie here, or there are relationships with all these Broadway designers. These are also very important things to consider when you're talking to the recruiter, so that you know, and you can ask them about that in depth. Now, again, just to be honest with you, 15 minutes is not a lot of time. The way I used to do it when I was doing this every year was I would already have seen the work, and I would just basically say, well, all of the information, that about financial aid and everything else is right here in this pamphlet or on our website or whatever. I want to talk about your work right now. And I want to know how you feel, about what your process was for this show and why it was important for you to do the show. So they're talking immediately about you. They're not just selling their school. And I'm just really amazed at some of the people, because sometimes you're so close, you hear other people talking. And it's hard not to hear these things. And some of the crap that recruiters say is just unbelievable. Like, well, do you know that we're the number one ranked school when it comes to basket making and blah, 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 and all this other. And you just hear 10 minutes of this shit. And then the last 5, oh, tell me about yourself, No, by that time, you're completely turned off. So make sure that the majority of that time is about your work. And shame on the recruiters who don't talk about your work, because they're looking for something different. I don't know what they're looking for, but they're obviously not looking for good students. And a good student is someone who can explain their work and can go ahead and just have that personal point of view about it. So yeah, those are the questions I think that you should focus on. And Ellen has a question to ask.
So my next question would be, what is the real cost of 3 years of graduate school? And do students have to work for a few years to be able to afford it?
So what do you think, Steve?
Well,
affording grad school, what should they look for?
This is a hard one. I have a daughter who's moving on to a PhD program, and she's looking at she's got it narrowed down to 3 or 4 schools, and they're all offering a great deal of financial incentive to come to their programs. No one wants to go to school and come out with a lot of debt. I understand that. The other side of that is you do have to be a little careful, because you may be going to a school and they're offering you a lot of money and you turn into a worker bee, and for 3 years you've been an indentured servant, and you leave school and you have very little debt, but you might also not have the advantages of a school that has a connection, going back to David's point, of people who are working in the industry, a really rich alumni base that can open doors for you, people who are working in the field that you want to be working in. It's a lonely feeling in the 3rd year. You get through the program and then you think, well, now what do I do? Well, if you're at the right school, they've been helping you for 3 years. Prepare for a soft landing on one of the coasts, or maybe in Atlanta or Chicago or DC. You pick it. They're trying to get you where you want to be, as opposed to just, well, good luck, And in a year, we'll send you a note about you can be an alumni, sending us $100 a month to pay for other people. So I think, the cost of going to graduate school, you can, what's an apartment cost? They're about the same everywhere. You're probably looking at $1,000 to $1,500 for an apartment. What does food cost? You're probably looking at $100 a week if you're modest. I can see easily going to grad school and you're into $25,000 or $30,000 a year, and most of the schools are offering $12,000 to $20,000. Any way you cut it, you're going to come up short. Some people do take a gap year and try to work. And there's nothing wrong with that. You start out thinking, well, I'll take a gap year and work and save a lot of money. I look at it a different way. You take a gap year and you work in the industry to start making connections, and maybe you're making 75 cents on the dollar that you would be making working at the department store. But it's not just you're saving money for grad school. You're networking. You're finding out if this is what you want to be in. You're finding out if television is for you or live theater's for you. So a lot of times this financial package is also tied to whether you're actually ready for graduate school. There are a lot of people who come to URTA who are getting a bachelor's degree in a few months and then they want to continue with school. And I get it. There's some logic to that. But there's also a few students there who've been out for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Bethany, she graduated in 2018. She's been working in the industry and getting ready and prepping for graduate school. So there's something nice about being out and working, and you're starting to decide what it is you need from a graduate program. What do you need from XYZ school that the ABC school doesn't have to offer you? So all this financial stuff is tied together, I think, with preparing to come to graduate school. But if you want a hard number, $25,000 to $30,000 a year, and that's with a tuition waiver. So if you're coming to SMU, we offer $12,000. Not the highest paying school out there, not the lowest paying school, but it's still $12,000, and you're still short, by my calculation, about $18,000. So that's got to come from somewhere. So it's graduate school is a huge financial burden to undertake. So you want to be sure you're at the right place.
I don't think that you should have to work while you're going to graduate school. And I'm talking about working at like a bagel place or something like that, even though that's what we did. I just think that the demands of a good graduate program kind of make it impossible for you to do that because you're working on shows all the time and you're doing all this other stuff. So a much more sane way of doing it, I think, is with student loans. And if you're only going into debt like $18,000 to $20,000 a year, that's $60,000 over 3 years. But that gives you the opportunity to have all your time dedicated to your graduate studies. And some of that may be leaving for a month to do an internship in Columbia, right? Someone's going down to Columbia to design a show, and you're going to have to be gone for a month. If you had a regular job, you wouldn't be able to do that. And you wouldn't have the freedom to go out and see a technical rehearsal at the Dallas Opera, where you wouldn't have the freedom to go out to see any type of plays that may be happening or special lectures or things like that. I don't think that's really unreasonable. I think that's actually a pretty good financial package. So yeah, if those are the numbers, but again, don't go to any school that forces you to pay any type of tuition. So I think that was really good, Steve.
Well, we've never required our graduate students to do assistantship hours, and I think you hit the nail on the head. You're there to produce work there, and there's nothing worse than if you're struggling on a show, you're building your model, the muse has hit you, and the alarm goes off, and you've got to walk downstairs to the box office for an hour and a half. Or worse, you're struggling and you've got to go to Lowe's. So it's a dance, but it's 3 short years. And that's the thing you have to remember. It's 3 short years, then you're launching your career. And so what are you learning? Are you learning to be a designer? Or are you learning, I don't mean to be tacky, are you learning to be a cashier? And I get it. We all have struggles with money, but we have to think beyond that. And I think your loan solution is a good solution, particularly if you're responsible with your money and you work out a budget, and you're going to have some bumps, but you're going to figure this out.
We got another letter. The student was wondering what they should do, if they should do a online interview or an in-person interview or both. I stopped recruiting right before COVID, and I was never there for the Zoom interviews. So, Steve, could you explain that, what options the students have?
Well, I think it is, I'm not an expert in this, but I think some people prefer the Zoom interviews because they simply don't have the funding as a student to get to Chicago, or the faculty member doesn't have the time, because you're there for about a week, the way it's scheduled out. If you're a recruiter, that's a long time to be someplace in the middle of a school year. So I think the Zoom is there to encourage even more people to participate in the process. I think we got to turn that question on its head. There is nothing that stops you as a student from contacting, our good friends at the University of Texas a month before URTA or 2 months before URTA and saying, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about your program. You can interview with someone anytime you want to. You've got to elongate this a little bit. This is a little short for people who are going to URTA today, but for those of you who are juniors and thinking about URTA a year from now, you can be talking to people. You can do a site visit. You've decided that you want to go to this school and wherever. There's nothing stops you from visiting that school and visiting those people. So I think Zoom is a powerful tool. I prefer to meet someone in person. So if someone comes to my school, I really just, that shows they have some skin in the game. Zoom, it's weird. The last time I did Zoom interviews at URTA, there were, maybe I did 8 or 9 of them. And probably 6 of the students were really prepared. And they brought their A game to the interview process, and it went well. And there were 3 or 4, it was like they were talking to their best friend about the first person shooter game. I mean, they had no idea how to do an interview online. Either they'd never practiced or they were just sitting there staring at their computer screen. But for the 6 or 7 who had really prepared for it, it was a great interview. So it comes down to how prepared you are. The nice thing about an interview outside of the URTA process is you're not limited to 15 minutes. The URTA interviews are URTA interviews, so you agree to play by their rules, and their rules are a 15-minute interview. Otherwise, they couldn't process all the students who are there and with all of the recruiters who are there. So there's nothing wrong about it or bad about it. It's just a matter of time. I've had a couple students that have stalked us for a couple years and who are now in the program or have been in the program. They come and they visit and they go, I want to do this or I want to do that. Well, what do you bring? Oh, you're missing these skills, or you don't really have a lot under your belt yet. Go out and work a little bit. So you don't have to settle. If school 37 gives you an offer and they're 37th on your list and the top 5 schools didn't give you offers, now is the time after the URTAs. This is the follow-up. What questions do you ask after the URTA interviews? I think Dave and I've laid out a lot of things you talk with at your second and third date. But the big question, and we'll use the big boogeyman Yale. You didn't get into Yale. Well, now's the time to call them and say, what is it going to take for me to be a Yale student? What am I short in? What am I lacking? What skills do you want to see me develop? Is it realistic to keep trying to get into this school? And they're going to be honest with you. They're going to tell you. I'm always surprised. You look at students who do well, and these are students who are slightly older, have worked, have followed up, and they're in one of the top 5 or 6 schools that they want to be in, as opposed to just settling for probably a good school, but not the perfect school for them.
Okay, so the next question we received was, what do I do when schools start offering me positions for next year?
Oh man, that's a hard one there.
That's good news.
Here's the problem: is the school. Let's say the school's taking 2 people, and most schools are. If you have some integrity, you make 2 offers. You don't make 5. You make 2 because that's what you have the money for. So they've made their 2 offers to 2 people, and those 2 people, let's say they don't want to go to that school, but they don't want to turn them down because they want to keep those offers in their pocket. So that's hard, because all of a sudden they're hoping that Yale's going to give them a call. So for 30 days, they keep the 2 offers in their pocket, and at 11:59 on the final day, they accept or they turn them down. And that means all the people standing in line behind them don't get an offer. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong to this. If I were 20 years old and 5 schools made me offers, and I was pretty sure that 3 of those schools I didn't want to go to, I would not turn them down the first day I got the offer. I would hang on to that for no other reason is I would do more investigation about those 3 schools that I didn't think I was interested in. And all of a sudden, that Midwestern school, or you pick it, New England school or Southern school or California school where all the earthquakes are, is looking better and better because you're doing your due diligence and you're finding out who the faculty are, who the students are, what the facility's like, what the community is like. Is this a place I can live for 3 years? So it might surprise you. You might surprise yourself and go, well, I would have never gone to that school until I really seriously started researching them. Offers, the school gives you an offer, and you've got, I think, you can look at the URTA website. I think it's roughly 4 weeks. You can have that offer. And the idea in there is during that time, you could go visit that campus. Also, it is to take some pressure off of you. No school can say, I want you to come to my school, and by the way, you've got 3 hours to think about it. So you're not being pressured to make a foolish decision. You have some cooling off time, because it's exciting to get an offer. It's a validation that someone thinks your work is good. And so you want to please them, and you think, I'll never get another offer. So some schools offer the next day. They come out the door making offers. Some schools wait until about a week before the termination date of the offer, and they start making offers then. Every school has a strategy, and everyone believes that their strategy works. And that's just the game.
Well, don't you think that those late offers are because their original offers were turned down?
It might be. It might be.
Because it makes sense that you give the student an opportunity to visit the school. And if you wait for a week before the deadline is, then it's like it doesn't give the student any opportunity to see the school, because then they're going to have to get a quick flight, which is going to cost them a lot of money. I think that if you get 3 or 4 or 5 offers, you go and visit those schools immediately. And that's a lot of money. Well, okay, first of all, some schools will pay for your way out, believe it or not. Not many, but some do that. But let's say, assume that they're not paying your airfare, they most certainly will find a place for you to stay. It's an investment. Let's say it costs you $1,000 a trip, and you go to 4 schools, that's $4,000. That's a great investment, because exactly what Steve said, you never know. You got to sit in on classes. You got to talk to students. Make sure that recruiter hands you a list of students that you can email to talk about the school. If they haven't done it during recruiting, make sure you get that when they give you the offer. Say, this is great, I would love to. A student never had to ask me that. I would always clear up my students, hey, is it all right if I give your email out and talk to students? Oh, no problem, David. Because I'd ask permission, they'd say yes, and I would do that. And I did it immediately. That is really, really super, super important. So yeah, make that investment. Finally, this is not the end of the world. Let's say you make the wrong decision. Well, then you spend a year there and then you leave and you go to another school. It's only 1 year. I mean, you're probably like 23 years old, 24 maybe. What's the big difference if you start school when you're 24 or you start it when you're 25?
Drama in true life. I have a friend who went to a very good university, a good school. He was there for 2 years and decided he wanted to be a Broadway designer. And that school was not the way to do it. He made the trip to NYU and interviewed at NYU, and they were very interested in taking him in. And he said, how much of my credits can I transfer to NYU? And they said, not a one. You can't transfer anything. We don't do that. That may be changed since then. But he packed it in. He left a school that he had completed 2 years of an MFA program. He went to NYU, started over. And I'm telling you, he is a Broadway designer today. And NYU recognized the talent and the chutzpah that he had, and they helped him develop, and they helped him make the contacts. And he was in the city he had to be in. I never underestimate when someone tells me, I want to go to the West Coast. I always say, why are you talking to me? Why aren't you talking to the California schools? Because that's where you want to be. That's where you want to build your home. Those are the mentors that are going to help you find your way into the industry. Or the same thing. Why aren't you going to the East Coast schools if you want to be in that East Coast world?
Yeah. All important considerations.
If it's the wrong school, there's no harm, no foul. You've learned something, but go ahead and move on. You move on. Go to another school. And it's not a stain on you as a student. It's actually like, this person's smart. I've had a lot of people come to my school after they went to another school and they didn't like it. And again, it may not even be anything to do with the school. Maybe just you and the mentor didn't connect. You may feel that you have this connection in the interview and in subsequent interviews, but in real life, it didn't work out so well. This is why it's important to sit in on classes. You really need to go sit in on classes, see what it's like with this mentor, and ask questions to the students. Hey, what's David like? Was he nice? Is he demanding? What sort of teacher is he? Ask those questions, but you'll probably see it for yourself. I mean, usually when people would come to visit my school, I would meet with them after class and say, so what'd you think about the class? And they would tell me, usually honestly, what they thought. And most of it was good. But sometimes they say, I like a little more interaction, blah, blah, blah. And that's important. You really need to find the right mentor. We're all different. So, go with that. Well, Steve, have we covered everything? I think we've covered just about everything. I think so. And I think Bethany's going to get, with our information now, she's going to get 47 offers. She's going to get 47 offers. She's not going to know what to do. And then we're going to have to help her on that one. So that's when the lottery comes in handy. All right. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tell us that once again, you spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show at just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity. No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, the Snoot Group with a legal team of Sparks, Burnout, and Chase will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers and sister, coming to you from tropical St. Bart's, beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood in Long Beach, and the sad state of Texas today. And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you more of our casserole of nonsense.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Bye.
Toodles.